Hey guys, welcome back to the Fulco. It's the morning after the Chelsea game. So Chelsea won, Tottenham Hotspur 0. Normal service resumed in terms of Tottenham Hotspur going to Stamford Bridge and not being able to pick up anything, not even get a point. And as ever, a game full of controversy, as the Tottenham Chelsea games tend to be anyway. I mean, they really are, these fixtures, they really are box office for everybody watching. There's always going to be incident, there's always going to be a lot of bite to it, which is great from a neutral perspective. But what's not so great is Tottenham Hotspur's absolutely appalling record against Chelsea, particularly at Stamford Bridge, but in general. And it seems that these are games that we can never really get anything out of. We can never get over to the other side of the line and get a positive result. So let's have a little dig into the game and how it went, and my thoughts and what I'm particularly looking for between now and the end of the season. I've obviously said that for me, the league, I know a lot of people are saying the league's a write-off. For me, the importance of the league is only about performances. It's about minutes in legs, and it's about rotating players and trying to get everybody up to a certain level, get everybody up to a certain sharpness, coming back off injuries, and get them into a position where we've got our squad in the strongest possible place to go into these Europa League games to try and get through to the Europa League final and secure a trophy, because that will be the only way that we can really salvage what's been a really poor season. So in order to do that, we need to use these league games to get to that position, to rotate our players, to get minutes into them, to try and get them through without injuries. And from that perspective, you are no longer that focused on the result, but you do want to see the performances. You want to see what's happening. And there's also a certain element of wanting to understand whether Ange can take the group of players that he's got and put performances on the pitch. So again, regardless of the results, because you can then point at the recruitment or the quality of the players, and you can say, we haven't got what we need to achieve what Ange wants to achieve, but what he has got to do and his coaching staff have got to do is they've got to get a tune out of the players they have got. And when we had all the injuries, you could legitimately say there was a reason that you can't do that. Players have been overplayed, and you haven't got, your strongest members available to try and put down the system. What became evident last night is that, again, we've had a really poor first half. We've come out there and seemingly we're unable to come out and impose ourselves in the first half of games. No shots on target, really struggled to create anything. And yeah, from an attacking perspective, it wasn't great. It wasn't very good, but it wasn't as if Chelsea completely overran us in the first half, but they were by far the better team. And more concerning for me in this particular game than the inability to be able to get out and to play, because, you're away from home, Chelsea are going to be up for this game, that, they're going to make it hard for you. And they have got players coming back, so they did have a stronger starting lineup than maybe they've had in recent weeks. But it's the defensive element. It's the part that is the hardest for me to understand about the system. It's the part that's the hardest for me to kind of see something that I can cling on to, and I can say, right, I can see from a defensive perspective, this is what we're trying to achieve. And the players can do it, and they can execute, and they're improving, and they're building into it. I really can't see it. The same frailties that are always evident are still evident. And that first half really exposed it. So Chelsea decided to play what you would argue is a far more pragmatic style, right? So they looked as if they weren't comfortable playing the ball out from the back and trying to draw us on. They know we're a high pressing, high intensity team. And so they were perfectly willing to knock it backwards, and then either the fullbacks or the centre halves or Sanchez in goal were going to hammer it long, and they were going to test us and stretch us and then move their team up that way. And it was perfectly accepted. It was fine. Like, you could hear at moments when Chelsea had possession of the ball and they didn't advance it forward and they moved back, the crowd were getting on them. It's not what their crowd wants to see, and we know there's a bit of discontent over that side of London. But they came up with something to test us and we didn't respond to it. So I've said this previously, that the players that we've got don't seem to be able to adapt on the fly. It's disappointing if it wasn't flagged that they might do this, but when they do it, there are players in that team that are senior enough and experienced enough to be able to take control of that situation and just manage it on the pitch. And I don't think we did. I don't think we managed it. But even though there was, almost a calamitous moment very early on where one long ball over the top to Nico Jackson and, Romero and Van der Ven are caught, Vicario's caught in no man's land, and we just about managed to scramble it away. I've got absolutely no idea why Van der Ven goes with his right foot to go across Jackson to clear the ball. Van der Ven struggled a little bit in this game, if truth be told, from my perspective, when, he should be clipping it with his left foot out the other way because there's no one on that side. But we got away with it. It crashed off the post and came out. And then we tried to play out, gave the ball away, and they had another couple of shots. So we're inviting pressure on ourselves with not only our inability to deal with it on the defensive side of the ball, but then when we're trying to come out with the ball, we're trying to play in the wrong areas, or we're not executing and we're giving the ball away. And that's leading to multiple chances against us. So they weren't high quality chances, but again, it gets the crowd on side. It gives confidence to the home team, and it makes everything harder for us. These are the things we've got to solve. We've got to do them better. And we've got eight more league games and potentially anywhere up to 5 games in the Europa League to do that. So definitely want to see us do better. There were lots of chances, or there were quite a few chances for Chelsea in the first half. Again, just looking at the areas where we really struggle, that our midfield is not doing what they need to do. So there was a moment where Chelsea didn't even commit players. I thought they would commit players up into our fullback areas and into the half spaces to overload, which they actually did for the goal. But they just had, they were willing to go 1v1 in those wide areas, and we were doing okay at the 1v1 defending. But then there was a moment where Cole Palmer comes into the half space. Berrival goes with him up to a certain point, then sits into the line and just lets Palmer run off him. And Palmer, good quality player. He gets in there, plays a lovely ball through Romero's legs, and they were probably unlucky. So again, Enzo, I think it is barreling in there, trying to provide that high energy midfield late run, and we got away with it. And in fact, it was one of those that bobbled around and bobbled off Udogi's arms. I'll give Udogi credit for that one, because he does tuck in and he does what a good fullback should be doing, which is he sees a problem coming and he tracks it. But for me, Berrival gets it wrong, lets his player go. It's far too easy. We need to do a lot better in these situations. And then, Chelsea had other bits and pieces and other, things across the first half. So we were very fortunate to go in at 0-0 at half time. And the other thing that obviously bears mentioning, and because it's all on the negative side, it feels very negative heavy, this video, Vicario. When a game is tense and tight, I feel that he's got so much going on that he gets very excited, and he also had a very poor first half, barring a wonderful save, because he also invited pressure onto us. He had 2 or 3 occasions where either he gave possession directly away with a really poor ball distributed, ball played back to him. His first touch isn't good enough. He's got it rolling towards his goal line and he's panicking. An awful ball played into Udogi. Absolutely not the ball to be played into Udogi, to have the ball nicked off him and allow Chelsea to come on. It's that identification of when to play out and who to play out to. I've got no issue with playing out from the back, but you have to do it better. You have to identify it better. He makes amends with a very fine save. I believe it's Sancho, who gets in. And again, it's an awful situation. Chelsea were switching the ball, and because our system is so fluid, it always catches us out. We always find players not quite sure which pockets they're sitting into, having to travel long distances to try and get where they are, getting there late. And then again, we find Jed Spence isolated under the ball floated over the top, and there's 2 players on the wrong side. And eventually Sancho cuts in, has a shot, and it's a wonderful save from Vicario. So credit to him for that. That's absolutely brilliant. But he really struggled in the first half. And this is a part of his game that he's got to improve. I know he's moving into that leadership role, and there's a lot of talking, and a lot of energy, and a lot of that kind of stuff. But he has to also calm his mind. He has to calm himself down in games like this, because he's got a job to do. And him being skittish, for want of a better word, invites pressure on us, so it doesn't help us. We go into the second half, and it's, it's not maybe quite as bad for the first 5-10 minutes, but Tottenham, all our weaknesses, our defensive weaknesses, are exposed in the same way that they have been so many times this season. And again, there's limited excuses now between now and the end of the season, because you can't blame it on injuries, you can't blame it on the players coming back. Yes, you could argue rustiness, rhythm, tempo, but there's only so long that you get, and sometimes you are unlucky, and those things are genuine even now with players coming back. But at the top level, you don't get time, you don't get a chance. And so that's just the way it is of, the super competitive nature at Premier League level. And so you've got a situation where there are two waves of attack from Chelsea, and we just deal with every phase of those attacks poorly. So we managed to scramble the ball away once, but again, we make first contact, but we never clear it far enough. So it's always falling to a Chelsea player. They've got their entire team, including their centre-halves, really pressed up and boxed us in. We've got no out. It comes from a really poor ball, I think, from Jed Spence trying to play out to Odebear, gets nicked, gets intercepted, and Chelsea are on the attack again. And this time they did have enough players up because they were tight, put 3 players in and around the right full-back area. We make no effort or not enough effort to close down the cross. And the simple fact is, if you're going to allow the cross, then you need to be really well set for the delivery. Otherwise, you work really hard in the first instance to cut out the cross. We don't do that. We allow loads of time for a floated ball. So we don't even rush Palmer enough to make him put in a decent delivery. So he's able to just dink one over and in. Again, that late run from Enzo Fernandez. No midfielder tracks, no blocking. So if a midfielder's not going to drop that deep, there needs to be a block. There needs to be someone forcing him to take a different path. He can't just have a very straight jog into that area. And Van de Ven gets himself in all kinds of trouble. So again, Van de Ven might turn around and say, I want Udogie to be backing me up, but where that goes in, bang in the centre of the goal, I don't think that's the right thing. I just think it's a bit of inattention. So Van de Ven should be looking at the flight of the ball. Nico Jackson is not his man. He's on the wrong side of Romero, or he's on the backside of Romero. The flight of the ball was not Nico Jackson, so he's got to be taking his mark from that and saying, this isn't my issue. I'm not committing forward. I'm holding my position. And if he holds his position, that ball is coming to him, and he's challenging with Enzo, and I think he wins the header, or at least he gets contact onto it and sends it further on, and Udogie's then behind him. So defensive midfield didn't do our job. Centre half gets it wrong for me. Doesn't organise, doesn't do it well enough, and it's a really, really simple goal, and it's really disappointing. 1-0, home team are up, their tails are up. We looked a little bit deflated. We started maybe to put a few bits together after that. There was a couple of times where we managed to break out, and again, we weren't showing quality playing out, but there were moments where we were able to get the breaks and move the ball forward. And then there's the second Chelsea goal. So again, because it's disallowed, you can say, well, it doesn't really matter. So the line did its job, and that is right. But the tightness of that decision, to me, it talks to something else, which is, again, you cannot have a situation where your first contact is really, really weak. So the header out is from Berryvale. He doesn't get it to go very far, and we don't have anybody on the edge of the box. So everybody's dropped. Nobody's covering the edge of the box. Nobody's covering Caicedo. I think they had 3 players on the edge of the box that could have been in positions to pick up the ball, and we don't have anybody moving into that position to create a barrier. For me, it's not good enough. For me, the setup and the organisation of that. So when that ball goes in after first contact, you've got players that drop, players that stand, and you get that separation so that you've got different lines and different positions to block where the ball might fall to. We don't do it. Caicedo scores a nice goal. It's disallowed, probably by the hairs on Colwell's knee or something. So we're fortunate and we get away with it. But let's credit our line. So the line does go in well. They hold themselves well. Then we get a situation that is, the real talking point of the evening, the real flashpoint of the evening. Postecoglou makes some substitutions. Me personally, I didn't have a major issue with it. I understand why fans are thinking, Berryvale, he'd done a couple of good things in the first half. He's been our best player, arguably, for quite a long while, or our best creative player for a long while. And you could see them being frustrated by him coming off. They're singing, "You don't know what you're doing." That's irked the manager, and the changes worked. So what you do have to give the manager credit for is he's made a change, and that change did exactly what it was meant to do. Whether it was preloaded or whether it was something that was done specifically to alter the game and the way the game was going, whether it was the running power of Sarr versus Berryvale's carrying. We weren't carrying the ball, we weren't progressing it well enough. He decided to keep Maddison on, and I think that was due to the fact that Maddison did have a couple of occasions where he was able to swing nice balls into Son, into the gaps. So I've got no issue with that. I've got no issue with the changes, no issue with the personnel that were coming off or coming on. But Pape Sarr then nicks it off Caicedo. It's a foul, 100%. He catches him on the knee. I've got no issue with that. He rattles it in. It's these fine margins. You just wish that he'd managed to get a toe to the ball so that it would have given more hesitation. I get what the manager's saying about clear and obvious. It doesn't matter. For me, it was fairly clear. It shouldn't have taken that long to clear it up. Studs hit him on the knee. It pushes the ball forward. He rattles in a good shot. Sanchez probably could do better. But these are the things that don't go for Tottenham Hotspur. Not when you're at Stamford Bridge, not when you're playing in these big games. These little fine margins, they don't run our way. And then when that goal goes in, Postecoglou appears to have put his hand to his ear in response to the away fans criticising his changes. And, that's obviously what people are going to be talking about all week, and is going to be the major controversy. Within a game context, his changes worked. We were better. We started to accelerate and grow into the game and have a little bit more success. Chelsea then felt a bit more threatened and they sat back a little bit more. So that should have been a positive. But what should have been a positive was ruined by the reaction of the manager. That to me is not... That's a manager that's under so much pressure that it has got to him. And the reason I really take issue with it, and this is completely subjective, is because I believe that he's being disingenuous now. And I didn't think that's who he was as a person. He's come out afterwards and said, what are you talking about? And, that kind of stuff. Of course not. That's not what I was doing. I don't believe it. And therefore, I believe he's being disingenuous. And I don't like that. That's something that really irks me. I don't like it. If you are a Mourinho, you're a Mourinho. But if you come out as somebody who has a different set of values and a different way of doing things, but then you go against those things because the pressure's on you, I can understand making a mistake. But then you come out, you front it, and you say, look, heat of the moment. Yeah, I did it. I apologise to the away fans, or however you deal with it. But yeah, don't come out and be disingenuous, because I simply don't believe you. Never seen him, cup his ear in a come on kind of way after us scoring a goal in 2 seasons. So yeah, I simply don't believe it. And so yeah, I'm really disappointed. There's too many flashpoints with the fans. There's too much separation with the fans. It's going to be really difficult for him to come back from that kind of thing in terms of winning the fan trust. The only way he's going to do it is by winning the Europa League and then going on some kind of tear if he's still got a job next season. But it feels increasingly unlikely in terms of that massive disconnect. And you could say that towards the end of the game, it's only 1-0 and we have a really good chance. Again, the changes he made work. We see Brennan Johnson's value when he comes on and what he can do. When we're not heavily reliant on him, he came on, he did a couple of nice bits, he did a bit of good defending, and then he gets on his bike and we do really well. We move the ball forward quickly for once. We get it out to Johnson. Johnson plays the ball across and Sonny can't get it over the line. Again, it's these fine margins. We don't execute in the key moments. So that's why we never win or get a draw at Stamford Bridge, because we can't do those bits. If you want to be super technical on the Sonny chance, it's a really difficult chance. He's busting a gut to get there. For me, he overruns it by one step. He can actually start going to ground a little bit easier, so he'll be on more of a stretch, which will allow him to lift the ball. It's super difficult. Like, it would be doing that would be as easy to send it skying or wide or off the top of your foot and away it goes for a throw. So super difficult. This is not a major criticism of Sonny at all. I thought he was okay actually throughout the game, but if you want to be super technical, I thought he could go to ground a step earlier and maybe have a chance of lifting it over the keeper, because the keeper does really well. He throws himself across the goal. So yeah, fine margins. That at the end, that goes in 1-1 with whatever it was, 10-15 minutes to play with all the added time. Who knows where that game goes and what happens, or we get a draw out of it and we're feeling slightly different about things this morning. But we don't get over the line. And the underlying thing for me, if that goal had gone in, I'd still be disappointed in the performance, but I'd be feeling better because I got a point at Stamford Bridge. We get nothing, and I don't feel that the performance was particularly good. I don't feel we showed that we can play the ball out, and defensively, I don't see how we win the Europa League if we're going to defend like this. So I really, I'm struggling at the moment, but we'll move on to Southampton in the next game and we'll see how we do in that. So again, performance, don't care about the result, should be winning, should be beating Southampton, but just go out there and perform. And yeah, little shout out, Bentancur, decent game, played quite well. Bergvall did really well earlier in the game. Odebear struggled. He needs to really work on his one-on-one retention of the ball. We cannot afford in games like this to be turning over possession too easily. Sonny was okay. Maddison was okay. Van der Ven struggled. Udogie looks a shadow of his old self. Jed Spence was okay. He had one beautiful moment in between two Chelsea players where he, drags it around and drives between two. Sadly, he overran the ball, gave it away, but he gave Caicedo a good knock for it. So yeah, that was it. Dom Solanke ran around a lot and had zero service. Although he did have one really nice run. And then, yeah, some of the substitutes worked. The Matisse Tell one didn't really have time to do anything. Got out wide, put one crossing, but yeah, went straight to Sanchez. Probably should have been looking to lift that one or cut it back. So that selection of final delivery. Yeah, we move on. Southampton next. Performance, important. Postecoglou riff with the fans, possibly insurmountable now. And yeah, everything focused on next Thursday. Anyway, let's leave it there. Come on, Tottenham.